Hi everyone, it's Alice, and today we are wrapping up the books I read in August. This month was pretty good, but going back to everyday life after having like some time off for the summer, it just like I knew it was coming, but I don't think I was totally prepared. I started school and work all at the same time, and it kind of just hit me like a truck. So I feel like this month just flew by and I don't really know where it went. I did read some books, and more importantly, I read some really good books. I liked actually all of the books that I read this month. They were all like solid reads. Let's talk about the books that I read though, starting with The Eight by Joanna Miller. This is historical fiction. It's set in Oxford in 1920, and we follow four female main characters who are all a part of some of the first female students admitted to the University of Oxford. And they come from different backgrounds. Some of them have some secrets and some dark stuff in their past, and the story is about them coming together in sort of unlikely but life affirming friendship, and it's all about them dealing with classes, academic life, misogyny, and just dealing with everything that they have to deal with. I'm always looking for books about female friendship, and for some reason they are very difficult to find. And I love a book with an academic setting. I love historical fiction and like 1920s Oxford. You can't really go wrong with that. Plus, this has some obvious sort of feminist themes to it. And so when I found this book, I was super excited about it. And I was right to be excited because it was great. Now, I'm the kind of reader who really likes character-driven books, and although there is stuff that happens in here, of course, and things are revealed, the story really is about these women and getting to know them and seeing them through this year at school. And I feel like that was the best way to do this story, because when you have four main characters, you do want the time to get to know all of them, and we get to see all of their perspectives. And I think sometimes with books, when you have a lot of main characters, it can be difficult to sort of separate them, and I at least can get them mixed up. But in this, once I got into it and we really get into the stories of these women, they felt very distinct to me, and I felt like they sort of came alive. The historical setting in academic Oxford is also excellent. I really enjoyed that part of the story, and I really liked seeing these women through the academic year and seeing them deal with entering this society in a way that isn't made for them, and there are a lot of rules for women, and the four women that we follow in here, they sort of deal with those rules very differently, and I thought that was quite interesting. The story, in a lot of ways, is about resilience, and I feel like that resilience shows up kind of differently in each of our main characters. I also really liked the writing in here and the structure of the story. I like the balance of it. I think that, like I said, with this many main characters, you do want to focus a fair amount on the characters, but I felt like there was just enough stuff happening in the book all the time to sort of drive the story forward. So I felt like that was done really well, and it can be kind of difficult to do. And there were even some surprises along the way, some of them more predictable than others, but I feel like it was really well crafted. Overall, this is a solid 4 out of 5 star read for me. I really enjoyed the time I got to spend with these women, and I really like that this book is a lot about life and friendship, but it's also about a very interesting moment in history, and I think that the author put all of this together very well. I also think it's one of those books that you can very clearly picture as a movie. Like, I think this would make a great film, at least one that I would like to watch, so I hope someone someday makes an adaptation of this, because I would love to see it. Secondly, I picked up The Firelight Apprentice by Bree Paulsen. This is a fantasy graphic novel, and it's set in a city powered by magic, and the story is about these two sisters, the youngest of which is developing magical powers, and she needs to be sent away to be trained and like learn how to control it and use it. And despite the eldest sister's reservations, she decides to send her youngest sister to train with this group of magicians. And she, like, the youngest sister is really excited, but it turns out that maybe the eldest sister was right to have some reservations, because there is some darkness lurking. This is the author and illustrated of the Garlic books, which I absolutely love. So I was super excited to have this and to read it. And I was expecting this to be just like a nice little read without too much darkness in it, and I feel like that's what I got, although I would say that this definitely has a darker edge to it than the Garlic books. Although, to be fair, it doesn't really take a lot. I really liked it though. It was just a nice little break from everything else. I also just really enjoy the illustration style of this author's and illustrator's work, and I really like the color palette, and I like how the characters are drawn, and some of the drawings in here, like the bigger ones, are absolutely beautiful, and it just feels like a treat to read. And I really like how the magic is illustrated. The magic itself is also really cool, and although that is a big part of the story, I would say that the book really focuses on the characters and sort of their emotions, both complicated and uncomplicated feelings in a way. And I liked how the story was balanced between the sisters. I think when I went into this, I thought it would be more about the youngest sister, but it actually switches between, and I really liked that. And I think that the pacing is done quite well, and I feel like pacing in graphic novels can be quite difficult to do well. This is geared towards a younger audience, so I think when you're reading it as an adult, how it all ends is probably not all that surprising, but I really like reading these books just to get to go on the journey. It's a really good mix of like magic and cute stuff and emotional stuff and also a little bit of spooky stuff, and I just really enjoyed it. The Garlic books will always be my favorites, I think, but I really like this one. It's a 4 out of 5 star read, and anything this author writes, like, I will read because I really like the art style and the stories, and it's just like a magical little treat. Then I read this one, which has a beautiful cover. This is Lady Macbeth by Reid. This is historical fiction with some fantasy elements to it, and it is, not surprisingly, a sort of reimagining of Shakespeare's Lady Macbeth. And in here, we meet our main character, who is known for having eyes that can bewitch a man, so she always wears a veil, and she is sent off to marry the Scottish Macbeth, who has quite a lot of secrets, and she has to adapt to this new life, which is quite precarious. Firstly, I want to say that I am like somewhat familiar with Macbeth, but I'm not like super into it, and so I'm coming at this from that perspective. And whenever I read like retellings or reimaginings, I don't really ever expect much from those kinds of books when it comes to like how close it is to the source material. And I feel like sometimes I might prefer if it sort of takes it in a totally different direction. And I know people feel very differently about like reimaginings and retellings, so I just wanted to say that. And although I'm not an expert in Macbeth, I would say that this is a sort of loose reimagining. And yeah, I know people feel very differently about those kinds of things, and they go into these kinds of books with different kinds of expectations. So I just wanted to mention it. I always go into these kinds of books with very little expectations as to like how it connects to the original. I almost disregard it whenever I read books like these. Like if I come across something that I recognize, I'll be like, okay, I know where that's from. But other than that, I just sort of try to take the book for what it is. And I think you need to do that with this to enjoy it, I think. I know that this has gotten very mixed reviews, and I don't know if it's just the style of the book or if it's the fact that it's supposed to be like a reimagining or whatever and people expect different things, but I sort of go into these books with very little expectations, and I feel like that works quite well for me. And I actually ended up really liking this one, but then again, I really like weird books, so that sort of tracks. I really liked reading about the main character in here. She is the sort of driver of the story, and she is the main focus of the story, and I really liked spending time with her. I thought she was a very interesting creature, and I feel like we sort of spent the book peeling back some of her layers, and I thought it was interesting that she spends a lot of the book in a sort of internal conflict as to who she really is, and I just thought it was interesting. I also really like the setting of this. It's very much like almost deserted Scottish Highlands where it's always cloudy and a little cold, and I really like that setting. I always like those kinds of settings in books though, so it's no surprise that I liked it in here as well. I also like the sort of feminist themes in here and how we explore patriarchy a little bit, and I do like that the main character gets increasingly angry. There is something very interesting about reading about angry female characters. At least I really like that. A huge thing to note about this book though is that I think it's one of those books where like it's kind of like 80% of it is all vibes. And if you can't get into the vibes, I don't think you're gonna like this. And I know like most people don't like those kinds of books, so I can see that not everyone would get into this, but even though I don't like all of those kinds of books that I've read, occasionally I will find one that I get really into. And I really liked the sort of sinister and haunting vibe of this. And again, I really liked reading about the main character and I wanted to see where the story was going to take her. It's definitely the kind of book that is for a particular kind of reader. And it's the kind of book that I wouldn't like widely recommend necessarily, but I really liked it, so I'm gonna give it 4 stars. And now I really want to read more from this author actually. I think I have one or maybe two of her books on my shelves, and I really want to get to them because I really liked it. I don't know if the vibe is the same or like similar in all of her books because it seems like they are quite different, but yeah. This was a weird one, but I was into it. Second to last, I picked up Blood Over Bright Haven by M.L. Wang. This is a fantasy book with some definite dark academia vibes. It follows the first woman in this magical, like, fantasy world who gets admitted into the high magistry at the university, and she has spent 20 years studying to get into this place. And she gets there, and not everybody is happy to have her there. Her colleagues are determined to make her life difficult, so instead of giving her like a proper assistant, they give her a janitor as an assistant. But it turns out that maybe this was actually the sort of key to unraveling some of the secrets of this place and the secret of what keeps the powerful people in this place powerful. This is a book that I've been really excited to read ever since I heard about it. I love, as you know, anything with like dark academia vibes and themes, and this just sounded kind of perfect. And I thought that the fantasy elements was going to be really interesting, and it just sounded like a great story. And it definitely was. It was a very interesting read. I really, really liked it, and there are a lot of elements to this that I just really enjoyed. I think the setting of this is really cool. It's set in the city, and the city is being protected by this magical barrier, which is kind of like a dome, and this is a big part of the story as well. And everything inside the city is quite advanced, but everything outside of it is very dangerous, and I really liked having that as a setting and sort of exploring what that was. I also just really like the fact that a lot of this book takes place in like the university because I love an academic setting. I also really liked following our main characters in here. The female main character in particular I thought was very interesting. She is super ambitious and she's kind of like egotistical in a way, and she's not that nice all the time, and it's very interesting to follow her, I think, because she is, although she disagrees with some parts of the society she lives in, she is like very entrenched in others. And it was very interesting to see her sort of scientific beliefs, but also her religious beliefs, and seeing her unravel some of those things throughout the book. I really enjoyed following that journey. I also really like the dynamic between her and the assistant because he comes from a totally different background, and I like the sort of challenge that he represents, and I like just following the main character being challenged and seeing her internal like thought processes around being challenged and being like she wants the truth, but sometimes she doesn't want to look at it in a way, but then she has to. The society that we get to see in here was also interesting. It's very patriarchal and deeply sexist, and it's both interesting and infuriating to read about. And of course, our main character is a woman in the society, and she comes across a lot of challenges because of the way that the society is set up. And I thought that was really interesting. I also really like all of the backstory that we get to see about the city and the society in it. We get these snippets of like religious texts and things like that. And I really liked having that. Sometimes when these kinds of things are in books, I feel like they're unnecessary. But in this one, I really liked it because we get to see a little bit more of like the lore of the city without having to slot it into the story. Now, there are a few things in here that didn't work as well for me, but I really feel like these things are very much personal preference. The first thing is that there is a little bit of romance here. There's like a hint of it, and I felt like it was unnecessary. I think that might just be the fact that I don't really like romance, and I'm usually not that invested in it, so in a lot of these kinds of books it just feels unnecessary for me. But I've read some reviews of this, and some people really like that, so I think that's just me. The second thing is, and this is a thing that I know people disagree on, and again, I think it's just personal preference. I like it a little bit better when books are not as obvious with what they're trying to tell you, and they're a little not necessarily vague in their messaging, but just takes a step back and lets the reader sort of come to their own conclusions. I think those books have more of an impact on me because they challenge my mind in a different way. I don't just read a book and be like, okay, this is what it's trying to tell me, but when it trusts the reader a little bit more, it like makes an impact because I get to sort of make my own conclusions and I'm like, oh yeah, this is what it is. Like, and it really challenges like the way that I think, and I just think it's a little bit better if the books just trust the reader a little bit more. I still think this is really good and I do agree with the messaging. I just think sometimes if books or stories just took one step back and just dialed it back a little bit, I just think it has more of an impact on me personally. This is a thing that people have totally different opinions on, so this is just me. And it's still like it's a really good book still. I thought about it when I was reading. I was like, I think this would have been a 5-star read if it just trusted the reader a little bit more. I do really like the fact that it's a standalone though, and I think it works really well as a standalone, and I think we're really creating a whole world in here and a very like thought out and cool magic system, and like the society, it feels very well developed and I think it was done really well. I really liked reading about the characters in here. I also really liked how it ended. I know some people don't like the ending. I really liked the ending. I feel like it fit the story really well. And overall, I just really liked it. It's a 4 out of 5-star read for me. It could have been a 5, but it's not quite there. But it's a book I've thought about several times since I finished it. And it is a dark academia book that I think a lot of people would like. And I think with dark academia, very often that is not the case because a lot of dark academia books are very weird. But I feel like if you like fantasy, in all likelihood, you would like this. It's just a very solid book. Lastly, I wanted to end the month on a sort of cozy note, so I picked up Bookshops and Bonedust by Travis Baldree. This is a fantasy book, like a cozy fantasy book, and it's the prequel to Legends and Lattes. And in this one, we're following the same main character as in that book, but before the events of that book, obviously, because it's a prequel. And we are meeting our main character, who is an orc, while she's still in her adventuring and mercenary days. And the book starts off with her being on a sort of mission, and she gets injured, and she gets like left behind in this sleepy town to recuperate and heal. And the story is about her healing and getting to know this town a little bit, and she's really scared that she's going to be bored out of her mind, but then of course she meets some friends, and there is also some stuff lurking beneath the surface in this sleepy little town. Now, I loved the first Legends and Lattes book. That book just felt like a warm hug. It was so cozy and charming, and the minute I got into this book, I got exactly the same feeling. Like, it's all warm and fuzzy, and it's just so cozy and delightful. So I love reading these kinds of books, and the books in like this series in particular, it just hits me in a way that is just the best. I feel like these books just feel like a break from everything else. It's like a nice little break from reality, and I just really enjoy them, and I get so easily sucked into them. I also really liked meeting our main character again and seeing her in a different part of her life and seeing sort of her backstory a little bit. And I just really like reading about her as a character in general. I also feel like these books always have like super endearing side characters and kind of like fun side characters. And there are lots of them in here, but an example is, does this count as a side character? It doesn't speak, but there is a creature in here that's like a mix between a dog and an owl. And he's called Pot Roast. Like, who comes up with that? That's so funny. There's also lovely baked goods, a little bit of romance, a little bit of action, all with the backdrop of this seaside town, and it's just so lovely. It feels very low stakes. It is very low stakes, and it's not at all stressful to read, which I really appreciate. Sometimes the books that I read are really stressful, so it's nice to get a little bit of a break from it. The writing is very easy to read in here. It's very easy to get into, but it still creates atmosphere and really like characters that you love. And a thing that I really like in these books is like the humor. I remember when I read Legends and Lattes, I would like chuckle a lot when I was reading that book, and it was the same with this one. Like, I was reading this before bed and like chuckling in my bed because it's just funny. Obviously, it also makes me really happy that a lot of this story takes place in a bookshop, and the bookshop is a huge part of the story, and I really like the bookshop owner, and Pot Roast actually lives in the bookshop, which makes it even better. And again, it's just so funny that he's called Pot Roast. Like, it just makes me so happy. I also really like that these books are, like Legends and Lattes and this one, it's about friendship and being around people that you care about and caring about people, and it's just very sweet. These books feel very much like slice of life fantasy, for lack of a better phrase, and I just really enjoy it. I also like that we get to meet our main character at the height of her adventuring days, and she is forced to halt and to rest. And I feel like this book is just like soft and bookish and magical, and I like all of those things, so obviously I really like this as well. I think that Legends and Lattes will always have like a special place in my heart, but I really liked this one as well. It was just so sweet and charming, and again, it's like a warm hug. And I really think if you like Legends and Lattes, you would really like this as well. If you didn't like it, you'll probably not like this either because it follows the same main character and it is like similar very much in vibes, but I love a good cozy book, so I love this one. Those were all the books that I read in August though, and now I am so ready to get into some fall reading. Like, I'm so excited. I mean, I do still have a full-time job and full-time studies, and I have a lot of videos planned for this channel, like extra ones, so I think I'm probably a little bit delusional in thinking I'm gonna get to read a lot, but I'm sure I can squeeze it in. Sometimes I wish I was less fond of sleeping, but unfortunately I really enjoy doing that as well, so oh well. I'm excited for whatever fall reading I'm gonna be able to do. I'm sure it's gonna be great. Now, I would love to know what you all have been reading lately, and that was kind of it for today. As always, thank you very much for hanging out with me today, and I will see you soon. Bye!